I'm so grateful that I started all of that before getting that diagnosis. And again, it's another like sliding doors moment of what would it look like if I hadn't, right? And I just feel like I would have, I don't want to say been like rock bottom, but I definitely would have been more victim mode. And then I got more answers with results and okay, it's watch and wait. So I'm not even getting treatment yet. And I'm like, I'm not just going to watch and wait my life away.
We all contain magic. The question is, how do you contain your magic? I'm your host, Sonia. I'm a transformational coach, yoga educator, singer, and embodied alchemist. I'm here with you today to share the stories, the practices, and the awakenings that truly contain her magic. Let's begin. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to episode 8 of Contain Her Magic. Today we're going to explore living by design and how trusting what truly belongs to you will lift you. There are moments in life when the path ahead becomes uncertain, when plans shift, circumstances change, and we're asked to listen more closely to what truly belongs in our lives. My guest today, Jaime Moar, knows this terrain intimately. Jaime is a yoga teacher, entrepreneur, human design guide, and the author of That Does Not Belong to Me. She also has her own podcast by the same name. Through her work, she helps people reconnect with their inner authority and learn to trust the signals of their own design, the subtle ways that our body and intuition tells us what is aligned and what is not. But Jaime's wisdom isn't theoretical. It's been shaped by lived experience, including navigating an unexpected health challenge at a pivotal moment in her life. In this conversation, we explore what it means to live by design rather than by default, how learning to discern what truly belongs to us can become a path of healing, clarity, and alignment. We talk about community and the power that it has to help you to heal, and the courage it takes to trust your inner knowing, even when life feels very unpredictable. The things that truly do belong to us are the very things that lift us. Hi, Jaime.
Hi, Sonia.
Welcome to Contain Her Magic.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you with me today. In fact, you've invited me into your home, so thank you for that.
And we have my doggie here joining us, so hopefully he'll be nice and quiet throughout the episode.
Yeah, Marley is co-host today.
That's right. Silent in the background, hopefully.
And I just wanted to say, like I said when I came through the door, that it's been a long time now that I've wanted to sit down and talk to you. So I'm glad today's the day.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like we get to see each other in passing through social media or various events locally, but to actually sit and have a conversation is such a gift, and hopefully people will be able to enjoy it.
That's it. So I know that you do a lot of things, but in short, can you just let us know who is Jaime Moar?
Well, I am an entrepreneur, I would say, is my main title as, a job, but that many things fall under that. And I'm someone who has pivoted many times in my life too, which I can share more about. But I live in Knowlton, Quebec. I attempted to be in Montreal for a little while and I liked that, but I think I'm a small town girl at heart, and realizing more and more, I guess that comes also with getting older, is just the simplicity is really important to me at this point in my life. Less people, less stuff, less doing, So, and I'm married to a boat captain, which is fun because I co-own my family's marina here in Knowlton. So when we met through an online dating app, it felt very right because he was always interested in boating, and I always wondered if I'd find someone who, would take part in that. And we have this dog, Marley. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's more to it, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you should mention that, you're from Knowlton. I'm from Sutton. And for people who have no idea where those places are, we're nestled in the mountains of the Eastern Townships, and there's some beautiful lakes here too. So that's where you'll find the marina on Brome Lake. But, we both have grown up in these rural areas and gone out and explored the world, big city, and come back home again. If you look back at, say, the younger version of you, okay, so let's do kind of a looking back at young Jaime. What do you feel that she was searching for? So you talk about your pivots. maybe bring us back a little further and can get a
how
picture
far back shall we go?
Well, how far back can you remember? When we all say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that's funny because I just put out this book called That Does Not Belong to Me. And I write about it in that book, but I talk about how I wanted to be many things, which, I did want to be a school teacher because my mom was a kindergarten teacher. I wanted to be an artist like my grandmother. And I joke that I wanted to be a hairdresser like my barber Pierre, who was a barber here in Knowlton. And I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be a basketball player in the WNBA. I had many, hopes and dreams, which, I don't know if it'll come up, but in the world of human design, which is something I know much about, but I was reassured in learning that I'm a manifesting generator, which means I like to have my hands in many different pots. And I meant to pivot. I meant to live this nonlinear life. So I think to have all of those various dreams at such a young age even, and allowing myself, that at that point is so fitting. And even, I thought, I'll be a teacher. I'm good with kids. I was in my mom's classroom often. So she was a kindergarten teacher, and she ended up teaching for 37 years, I think. And it was her passion right until the very end when she decided to retire. And it was only because her body was tired. She mentally would have loved to carry on. But I remember also thinking when I was doing my taking early childhood education in university and thinking, I don't know if I'm going to love this as much as my mom. And that was a high expectation to have in the first place. But it was just also me realizing I want to find my thing that I have that excitement towards. And whether that thing changes, that's okay too. But it just didn't feel like it was teaching in the school system. And I admire teachers so much, but I realized it wasn't for me.
I'm curious then, so what first pulled you towards yoga and this inner work that I know that you have done through your practices?
I think I have an interesting way that I arrived at that, just because it wasn't full on. It wasn't like this, oh my gosh, I found the thing, And at first it started with, I remember being at Dawson College in Montreal and having 2 cassette tapes. And one was yoga and one was Pilates. And I was more into Pilates. I thought, maybe I'll be a Pilates teacher because it was more the exercise. And I was not on the woo side of things. The spiritual side was like, that's okay, but I'm not so into it. And then eventually I started doing trade at a yoga studio in Montreal because it was inaccessible financially. I was a university student, I had a bit of support from my family, but otherwise putting myself through school. But then when I realized I could work for 2-3 hours a week and be able to go to classes when I wanted, that's when I really started having more of a committed yoga practice, let's say. And at that point, I had already started teaching yoga for the special child. So, I was already into yoga in that way. And I think when I found that training, it wasn't because I was so passionate about the yoga. It was that I was passionate about working with that population and offering them something that they wouldn't maybe otherwise get to do. And moving our bodies is it's such a gift. And the fact that all of us can do it, we just need to know how, depending on our abilities, right? So that was my direction in. And then I started taking classes. At that point, I was like, I'll teach kids. I'll teach people with special needs, typical adults. I was like, no, too judgmental, too opinionated. I didn't want to. And then once I got, more confidence in teaching the populations I was teaching and thinking, kind of what's next, because I do like to have my hands in a few different pots, then I took my training to be able to teach typical adults as well and started teaching in studios. And so that was how I got into, teaching yoga and finding that world. And even my relationship now, I have a business partner, Val, at the Well. We co-own this yoga studio together, and she does Ashtanga. It's a dedicated practice for her, and I admire her so much. And I remember taking trainings with teachers, continuing education type trainings. And I remember one teacher in particular was like, you have to have a personal practice as a yoga teacher. You have to. And I would put so much pressure on myself and feel like I'm not good, I'm doing it wrong, because I wasn't doing that. I wasn't. And I understand why it's so important. It's not that. But once I remember being coached it was for coaching in life, but she was also a yoga teacher. And we were having that conversation. I was like, I want to do this. I want to have a personal practice. And she was like, is this a should? And I'm like, yes, 100% it's a should. She's like, stop then.
Yeah, don't should on yourself.
Exactly. And so then I let that go a little bit more. And, you know, I when I teach my practices, I yes, I do it a bit as well. It's not for me. I'm demoing, you know, in the way that we do sometimes, or sometimes not at all. And you're speaking it. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like what my relationship with yoga is now, because it's more of an offering, even though it's still important to me.
Well, I'm getting that from you. I think maybe that was something present right from the beginning, because your calling towards it was to help that population of people or children with special needs. Mm-hmm. So that was, you know, an offering. And I think maybe that has continued through the years.
Thanks for making that come full circle. That's really nice.
Well, that's why these talks are good. But if we look at what it's brought you personally, what do you feel that your yoga practice has helped you to heal in your life?
I think, you know, the answer that comes to mind first is community. Mm-hmm. And as much as it's interesting because it's a practice for the self, right? And that's so special to have that time with yourself on your yoga mat, with your body, your breath, your mind. I think the true gift is the connections that I've formed with people. So, you know, we opened The Well, this brick and mortar yoga studio, which was never part of my plan. That happened in 2022. Before that, I was teaching in these various locations, like I said, getting to go to different schools and community centers, and then studios in Montreal, and then also teaching on the docks. So on the lake here at the marina. I'm pointing this way for those, you know, it's literally down the street. And I started building that small community out here in my hometown. And I would even in the winter teach inside the marina, which is a small space, cold floors, but we still created this cozy, warm environment. And then when I met Val and she had the idea of this studio, it was like this thing that sparked inside of me of like, of course, you know, I had no desire to do this because I was so tied to a brick and mortar business as an entrepreneur in the summer months with the restaurant and the marina, that the rest of the time I was like, okay, I can do contracts here and there. I can create coaching programs that I can, you know, do when fits my schedule and then take time off. And so never did I think I wanted another, you know, a business that is running all the time. But again, when I met her, had that conversation, she had the business plan, she had the numbers all down, which is her forte. I had the connection with people in the community. Then it just made so much sense to open this space. And I'll just continue with the fact that that was timed with me being diagnosed with cancer, with follicular lymphoma, which is a chronic blood cancer. And literally the timing of it was, it's okay if I go into this, the timing was that the day that we were supposed to do a practice class, like a trial class in the space that we're in, I was supposed to teach it. Val had COVID at the time. I got a call that morning from the local doctor's office saying, your results are in, because I had had a biopsy from these lumps on my neck. Your results are in and bring someone with you, was what the receptionist said. So yeah, I had the sinking feeling, you know, okay. So I call Val. Okay, I'm like, it's not going to be great news. I'm fairly certain, you know, I don't need support if it's good news. So we canceled the class and we were supposed to sign the lease. Like we assumed it was going to work. We were going to sign the lease like days later. And I remember in the doctor's office when the doctor said, you have lymphoma. And I was like, which one is that? You know, is this something that I'll just beat it? It's fine. I'll just, you know.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed that, you know, you'd think that all these other parts of my life would matter so much more than this idea of this yoga studio that we had literally started planning 2 weeks earlier, maybe 3. I don't even think 3. But there was a sinking sadness of, oh no, because this, you know, and I think it's just to speak to like the signs we may see in life or these things that we think are timing of like, okay, it's maybe not meant to be because of this thing that happened. But I think to take notice of that feeling of disappointment is also a sign that, no, you really want this, right? So we paused for a moment. And then I got more answers with results and okay, it's watch and wait. So I'm not even getting treatment yet. And I'm like, I'm not just going to watch and wait my life away, you know, and Val thankfully was willing to go all in with me, even though we knew it was not going to be an easy road coming up.
Yeah, but you had a good partner by your side.
Absolutely. Right from the start. We didn't even know each other before this. So that was a friendship that got formed and yeah. Don't even know what the question was. I really went off on a tangent there.
Well, it was. I think we were talking about how yoga brought a healing for you or is healing you, and you went into the community and into the well. But I think what I'm hearing from this is like what you said, it isn't so much the circumstances. Sometimes you don't get the answer you want or you're expecting, but it's recognizing how it makes you feel to know what your next steps should be.
Yeah.
Or could be.
Absolutely.
Because we'll stop using that should be.
Absolutely, yes, for sure. So it's those feelings inside that generally are coming from your gut or your heart or wherever it may be that you feel it, that we need to be guided towards. And also just to come back to, thank you for reminding me, but that healing from the community, you know, as I proceeded through the next 3.5 years of treatments and various things, I still was very involved in teaching pretty much the whole time, even going through the treatments. I had to be replaced sometimes, but that was part of the healing too, was being in community. Even though I was in discomfort for moments of the time, I didn't want to sit at home on the couch.
Right.
And so, you know, and I wasn't going to show up as a yoga teacher if I didn't feel like I could, but I could. And it helped me.
What do you think it might have looked like for you if you hadn't had that project at that stage, at that point in your life?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's such a good question, because I don't know if I've considered it. You know, part of me thinks, well, you may have rested more. You know, maybe. Yeah, I'm not even sure. It's really hard to imagine, just because it feels like it was so meant to be there.
So in talking about your illness, so now you got a clean bill of health, right?
That's right. I got a clear scan in early December 2025. I do have it's considered still a chronic blood cancer. So technically, as my oncologist said, it's unpredictable. And I'm trying not to live in that worry of that it could come back at any moment. But I'm feeling healthy, feeling good, and really trying to be like at peace with this clean bill of health.
And that's great, because when we have an illness like that, obviously it's destabilizing and it can affect your sense of control around your entire life. So I'm wondering, how did it reshape yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful that I had already, you know, started working on these kind of like tools or personal development or my relationship with control or lack thereof, and trusting both the universe and myself. And I'm so grateful that I started all of that before getting that diagnosis. And again, it's another like sliding doors moment of what would it look like if I hadn't, right? And I just feel like I would have, I don't want to say been like rock bottom, but I definitely would have been more victim mode. Like, and I still had moments, of course, as everyone should, of pity party, of feeling sorry for myself, but they were pretty few and far between. And I didn't want to just pretend or fake optimism, but I really feel like I had developed those tools, you know? And then in terms of control, one thing that comes to mind is that because this one is in particular, sure, like anytime we get hit with a problem with our health, it feels like you've lost that control, right? That's it. And it's the most important one that we can feel like we're in control of is I'm feeling good. And we don't necessarily acknowledge it enough. But one thing that I ended up doing was raising money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I partook in their Visionary of the Year campaign, it's called, a couple of years ago. And that felt, in that moment, especially because it was kind of in the earlier stages of me being like, what is this? And you're sure you can't just get rid of it? Like I have to live with it. And then when it comes back, then I treat it, and then it goes away, and then it comes back, you know? That felt really like, whew, okay, I have like really no control over this. And I mean, we could talk about like, I did the restricted diet thing and like tried, you know, the more natural ways too of feeling like I'm somewhat in control of something. But doing that fundraising really did feel like I was, you know, I wasn't controlling the situation, but I was taking action on it in a way that I could, that was tangible versus, you know, so. And we ended up raising $136,000, just a small town girl against, they put it as a competition, which I think is brilliant because we're all raising money for the same cause. But I was against all these corporate guys, you know, who have connections with people with deep pockets, and me with this community that we both live in is we all just came together. And
And that's the magic of it, is that when you do live in a community where people know you, there is this relationship that maybe you don't have in bigger centers.
Right.
So so that's good. And of course, then you know the community's behind you as well. So there must have been something very uplifting about that as well.
There sure was. And I have to say, like, I'm someone who's very, you probably see a bit, I'm open on social media, and I
have
really
been following
share,
you.
I share vulnerably, and I share maybe, like, some people might think it's TMI, but I have to say, especially going through it, and when I was sharing updates, whether good or bad, and people were either liking or hearting my post or commenting, I really would try to take the time to see everyone's comments, to heart it back. And I know it's silly because it's social media, but I really felt that exchange of love back and forth. And it's not silly, in fact, because that was something that I know was so healing for me too. It's that knowing that there's people there sending their love, literally.
Yeah. And, you know, and to put it into context, I mean, we could say you're in the prime of your life, and then you get this. So you're moving forward with your dreams, with your goals, and then boom, you have this, what most people would consider to be an enormous setback.
At 37.
At 37. And I remember seeing the post on social media where you had announced it. And I, not knowing you really, but knowing who you were, I thought, oh man, because it really hits home, you know? It was definitely eye-opening, and I was amazed, at how forthright you were and the courage that you showed right from day one. So I'd like to ask you, for other women who may be in a similar situation right now, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think not everyone needs to do it the way I did it, as in not everyone wants to be an open book like that. I do find it, some people are the opposite of, like, closed. And it's to each their own. Like, I'm not trying to put anything on anyone, but I do think there is healing in connecting. So, and I even, throughout all of this, found a friend on Instagram who lives out in BC who I've yet to meet, but she became like a pen pal for me because she had the same diagnosis as me. It's still different. Everyone's story is different, but just finding at least that one person that can, you can vent. I share things with her, and I'm an open book, and I share things with her that I don't with my closest friends. And she understands, and I hear her share things, and it makes me emotional almost every time, because there's just something that hits closer to home that is really healing as well, actually. I guess it's, it is therapeutic in a sense. She's not a therapist, but that's something that I think is so important. So just finding that person or people, and of course it's great to have your friends there for you and making meals for you, and, but I think even if it feels uncomfortable to talk about it or open up, maybe just find at least that one safe person that you feel like you can do that, or your journal to start, if that feels safer.
So to talk about it, to make connections, to feel like somebody understands you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have someone listen.
Very wise words. And is there a strength that has come from it that may have surprised you, something that you learned about yourself that you didn't realize?
Yeah. Well, I never thought I was a disciplined person. And because I am someone who, I can't stick to a consistent routine or the yoga practice or even, these sort of things. That's how I see myself. But I always like the idea of surprising ourselves and thinking, I'm not this. When we put ourselves in that kind of box and being like, hold on, let's just actually interrogate ourselves, experiment with maybe being that, even if it's for a minute. And then if it doesn't work, okay, we know. But I had mentioned that restricted diet. And I really thought that was a way where I felt like I could take control. And I believe in all of the things. So I wasn't strict or, of like, no, I'm only doing your conventional treatment, or I was willing to be open and see. But I ended up for 3 months I was followed with a friend who helped me through this and did a bunch of supplements and was cutting out, like, I hate to say this, but all the good things. And I know there's so much good in, healthy, nourishing food. Yeah. This was very extreme. Like, we were going to town on, like, eliminating, the only fruits I could eat were berries and apples and, like, that type of thing. So, but I was willing. And it's like a full-time job when you're doing that. And it was expensive but I was willing. That was a priority for me. And she had got me to create a mission statement. And my mission statement that I was using to remind myself, why am I doing this, is because I want to live a long and healthy life. And then eventually I was like, I want to live a long and happy life. And so I almost went the other extreme of but just to come back to the strength is that in that moment, and I know it's only 3 months and I did feel like you could do anything you want. You could do me, and she would acknowledge too that not everyone's willing to do this. Like, it makes you a bit, and I don't like saying I'm a fighter because I'd never really related to fighting cancer. Like, it was never that sort of like this FU cancer type thing. That's not where I was. And I wasn't like, oh, I love you. I know this is meant to be here. But a little bit, because I'm like, okay, well, it's here. I'm going to try not to place blame on myself for how it got here, because that's something important. We can do. And there's a lot of great books out there, like Louise Hay, and I read a couple of others that were really talking to, like, let's say probably your emotional background or history of like how this could have formed this dis-ease in your body. And I really dove deep into that. And then at a certain point too, I had to almost like push back and be like, no, this is creating a feeling of shame and blame that is not helpful or healing. So there's a lot, this is where it gets very overwhelming sometimes too. But I think just reflecting overall, it made me realize how strong I am just overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the kind of event in a person's life that makes them go in, get their resources. So you were saying earlier that you'd had a practice and that at some level that resilience, that you had in you already helped to support you through. And, you could put it like you'd already downloaded the software.
That's right.
You weren't playing fix and repair and react. You were already in a territory of understanding yourself enough and having a level of self-awareness that I think that you could then bring forward and apply into this situation. So
that's right.
I mean, that's the value of taking good care of yourself. But sometimes we need somebody to send us on that path, or we need a situation to send us on that path. And maybe this for you, I mean, obviously it wasn't what opened the door to it. I think it was you wanting to offer and to be of service to others, but then you're able to turn that and be of service to yourself.
And my hope too of sharing my story is that reminding people to not wait until something like this, God forbid, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does happen to you, ideally you've started this already. And by this, I mean, we can call it personal development but it's really spending time with yourself. It's really, and one of the things I'll say too is that when coming back to yoga, I think one of my favorite things to remind people of what we're doing here on our mat is learning to listen. It's learning to listen to this inner guidance, because especially like I just mentioned, the overwhelm that can happen when we're in these situations, and not just with cancer, with like all kinds of things. And then it's so loud outside of ourselves, just again, in general in the world. So to be able to quiet that noise and tune in is like the biggest gift we can give ourselves too.
It's huge. Absolutely. And I'm wondering, because I mean, we're going to get into your podcast and your book. And this question will lead us into it quite nicely, I think, which is, did that chapter of your life, which is really, I mean, you're just on the edges of it, did it reveal anything for you in the sense that maybe you realized that you had been holding on to something that truly did not belong to you?
I think I'm still learning. It's so confronting. And now that I've written this book of that title, That Does Not Belong to Me, I've been doing the podcast.
Which has the same title. So did you have a realization about something that you were holding on to that didn't belong to you through this journey?
So I realize that I every day almost have to practice this, and it's still the need to be liked. That's something that I've definitely worked on, that people-pleasing tendency. There's still relationships where it surfaces or resurfaces, and I know I see it, it's not just like blindly, oh, let me just try to make that person happy, oh, let me just try to please this. It's like full awareness of, let me just try to make that person happy. So I don't, and I don't think I make myself seem, from my angle writing in the book, I'm not an expert. Like I'm sharing stories is really what it is. It's through the lens of human design, which is where that statement, that does not belong to me, came from, which is just realizing that so much of this energy we might take in, it's not in fact ours.
No.
And I've had we had some rough moments, when I was going through treatment. I wasn't going through treatment. My dad was going through treatment.
Right, because your dad was ill at the same time with the same thing.
Exactly. 2 months after me, he got diagnosed.
That's wild.
He needed treatment before me. So I quickly went from, you have cancer, to now you're a caregiver in a certain way. He was pretty independent, but taking him to chemo, I didn't need treatment yet. So I was kind of seeing my future also too in that moment. And then, there was some raw moments, I'd say, within our family even, and just, in my life. And that's when it became loud and clear of just that statement was so powerful to me of that does not belong to me. And again, the reason it's on a book cover right now is because I need it to be on my coffee table. So I am reminded over and over again. It's not that,
I so know. I think that we end up teaching or coaching or the things that we need the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just coming back to that piece of if you hadn't been doing the project of the studio, I would have maybe been resting. I know that is also one that I'm still, this idea of productivity and that being a stamp of approval. And I know that's a societal thing that is not our thing. It doesn't need to be, and it doesn't need to look the way that we've been told it's supposed to look. But that's another unlearning that I'm still in the process of doing. So I know that's still, I can't answer that I have one lesson that I'm that's not mine anymore, and I've cleared it.
Yeah. Well, that takes a lifetime to do that kind of work. So again, it's one step at a time, one day at a time, one realization at a time. But I think that you have, a guiding principle. I think what I can see that you've installed in yourself is this idea that you have at least that framework that you can live within, that you can, maybe it's not a straight line, but there's a parameter. And if you get too far one way or the other, you'll know when to bring yourself a little closer to center.
That's right.
And that is the Contain Her Magic philosophy as well. So it's the idea of the container of, could it be the body or the mental emotional container or your boundaries? It can also be your determination, your purpose, being strong, being defined, being clear. But then it is that way so that it can hold all of your magic, all of your creativity, all of your joy, your vitality, and even things that are a little bit chaotic, a little Shakti energy inside your Shiva, if you will. But I like the idea of this cauldron, this witchy container, and your magic is bubbling out of it, but you're still holding it. And something that inspired me to use that title, and I just want to bring it in because I think it's relevant, is I read, it's Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the woman who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, which was an extremely formative book for me. I read it when I was about 24. And, back and forth over the years would go back to it kind of as my Bible. And it is that the problem of the loss of energy is solved through containment. Now, I'm paraphrasing, those aren't the exact words, but something along those lines. So I think when we talk about vitality and energy and having resources, then it's nice to be able, and that's very feminine energy, to be able to marry that with the masculine containment. And if we're going to talk about human design and astrology, I don't know if you're into astrology, but in terms of human design, I'm the same as you, manifesting generator.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I've looked into it a bit, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. But I also have things in my astrological chart that I have looked at in one way or another through the years, but have come to realize that it's that. It's that I have this Moon-Saturn thing that should be very uncomfortable, and it has. I've had things that are reflective of that. Where normally I would have free reign on enthusiasm and expression. I've been limited or restricted or kept within a parameter that was a little tighter. But at the same time, it's also a great strength in that I have this moon quality, this emotional, caring, changeable energy, right? Because the moon changes signs all the time, that's held by this bad daddy Saturn. And anyway, I think that when you look at life in general, it's never necessarily good or bad. I think it's how you see it, what you make of it. And the other thing that comes back to your philosophy is the container, right? what you keep in it, what you fill yourself
That's right.
up with, and what you decide to cast out of it.
It's so simple when we look at it that way. And I love the idea of the container. And there's a reason that we need that, is to keep out not the bad, but the nonsense, the stuff that's stealing our energy.
That doesn't belong to you.
That's right.
Or that doesn't serve you.
That's right.
I often think, is this useful or not useful? Is this loving or not loving? And often you have to say, is it loving or useful for me? Because sometimes what can be loving or useful for someone else may be a contradiction for you. And that is, well, it's a gray area. And for me, that would be my thing that I look at and kind of go, where's the guiding light there? Where I keep using that term. In my last podcast, I was like, the guiding light. I need to
I used to watch that soap
I know,
opera.
right? Like, anyway, I guess I just like the image of the guiding light.
They talk about that in human design, like generator energy is like, you're like a lighthouse when you're being, when you're in your zone and people are drawn towards you. So,
well, let's talk about that. Let's get into human design and into your book. Yeah. So which would you like to start with?
I'll start with human design because that's kind of the starting point of the book. And I guess I'll just share just a tiny bit, like in a nutshell. And one of the reasons I was drawn to human design, about 6 years ago, I had my reading, and it was in a moment where I thought I was going to build this business of yoga for kids and yoga for people with special needs. But really, I developed this program of teaching yoga to kids. And I thought, I'll build this empire and I'll have a bunch of teachers working with me and I'll train people. And so I signed up for this program with 2 coaches, and the idea of the program was to strip down your business and build it in a way that is very aligned, that is really aligned with you, not just the way that you've all of a sudden fallen into being an entrepreneur and you're just like really trying to figure it out as you go. And so now we can take a moment to see what makes sense actually for you. And part of it was getting your human design reading in that program. And when I heard the words, which I think like you don't need to know what your energy type is for this to maybe click, but when something no longer lights you up anymore, change directions. That was like a huge light bulb moment for me where I realized I've been doing this yoga for kids thing for 10 years. And I knew I was like, I couldn't name it before that, where I thought, I'm not like I'm not super looking forward to going, but when I'm there, I'm enjoying it. I like the kids. They're super cute. I can do this so easily. It's, I'm good at it. People tell me I'm good at it. And then I was like, oh, there's no light. There's no light anymore.
Yeah. There's no juice in it.
That's right. Yeah. And so that's when I had this kind of, and I'd already, it's never like a one-time thing, but I had already been thinking of the coaching world and thinking how I could probably help people and be a good coach in that way. So that's where that pivot happened. But so basically human design, that's when I started to dive deeper into what is it. I took trainings on how to do readings for other people so I could help change their lives was how I was seeing it. And it works with your energy. So it really combines the various modalities like astrology, astronomy, I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, all these things that I don't honestly know much or anything about. But when I heard human design, I was like, oh, this one, not only does it make sense to me, but I actually feel like I can practice it. Like I can actually try it. There's tangible tools that I can actually try out. So this one works with your energy in that we've got 9 energy centers throughout our body. So similar to the chakras. And we have, for example, the head, the mind, the throat center. And then each energy center in each person, depending on what time you were born, where you were born. So it does work on similar to a birth chart. Yeah. And from there, you figure out which energy centers you have open and which ones you have closed, or we say undefined or defined. And if they're open, you're more likely to receiving energy from outside of you. When they're defined, it means you're more likely to get energy from within you in that area.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction.
So for example, the head center, and I really I don't really give readings anymore, which is ironic because I just launched a book that would be perfect for getting people to take readings with me. But I really love the conversation around it and it's really not meant to put people in a box because it can sound that way sometimes when we say, you're like this, that means you're this, right? And we often think, okay, that's law, that's me, that's what this chart or tarot reading or whatever it is told me, right? So question those things sometimes. And again, it's all an experiment, but say, for example, you have an open head center, it might mean you're more likely to be inspired from things outside of you, like, people or places or books or podcasts or this podcast. And then if you're defined in that energy center, it might mean you're more inspired from within. So you might just be sitting on the couch and an idea comes to mind. So that's just to give an example. But overall, it's just to remind you too that we are taking energy from outside of us. So yes, that's great. Sometimes it's great because you surround yourself with the right people. They bring you that good energy that you actually needed. Sometimes it's not so great,
That's right. Yeah.
So, and sometimes, yeah, sure, we put on the news that can feel heavy sometimes. Of course, that makes sense. But some other times, often for all of us, it's energy we've been taking on since we were babies, tiny.
Yeah.
And we're taking on this energy from, our parents are the obvious thing, but then eventually our teachers and then the school kids that we were surrounded with because we happened to be in their same cohort or, so there's a lot there that, that's why I'm saying it's also not just one, like, not mine anymore.
Yeah, no. Well, that's it. And then you come into contact with it again. So I think that maybe like many things, it brings you into a process of awareness and it brings you into a process of self-reflection. And then again, you can sit with it and go, does that feel right or not? And I know that a lot of times people say, do I believe that or not? Which is also important, what you believe in. But I am increasingly turning up my how do I feel about that? And it doesn't mean that it's a clear answer. There's a conversation still.
And a feeling is a bit vague sometimes. It's not just a quick answer. Yeah. It can be, right? If it's like this big gut response or whatever, that can be pretty instant. And that's the other thing so human design reminds us that we're all energy, first of all. There's always energetic exchanges. And I like to remind people when you're going to bed at night and you're like, I don't know why I'm so tired. All I did was go to work today. It's like, yeah, how many people did you interact with throughout that day? Or, there's just always these exchanges going on that we don't even consider that, of course, they're stealing your energy or giving you energy. But in any case, makes sense if you're tired. The other thing it offers is guides you to where you're meant to make decisions from, which is such a beautiful gift because we're making decisions literally all the time. And it's in human design, you're not meant to make decisions from the logical brain, from the mind. It's more from this inner authority inside of us. So for many of us, or a lot of us, it's our sacral, it's our gut. It's this feeling of like these sounds that you make. And that's my favorite thing that I got to like practice is someone would ask me something like you even reaching out to do the podcast. And does it make me go like, ugh, or, right? So literally those sounds we make are like the languages of our gut. Yeah. So really
when we're done, I hope it makes you go,
it does. Yay! Well, it already does. And it did when you asked, otherwise I wouldn't be here because I've been practicing that. I still get it wrong sometimes, of course, but this one I really wanted to do. But that's been a fun one. And then other people, for half the population, they have what's called an emotional authority. And it's really that your emotions are your superpower. Like you're meant to have emotions. You're just not meant to make decisions in the emotion. So, and again, this all sounds logical, right? But it's just the fact that when you check out your chart or even just hearing this, even if you don't know your chart, you might be reminded, don't make a decision in the high of the emotion or the low of the emotion. And that's just also to say, like, we don't need to rush so much into saying yes or no to someone who's come our way to ask something of us, right? I'm someone who's been working really hard on that is because I always think, we got to get back to them. Got to let them. And it's like, let's just maybe take a minute and see, is this actually still feeling good? Let's wait for that. Especially if someone comes to you and you're like, maybe in this excitement, you'd think like, of course I'm saying yes, but is that your excitement or is that theirs? Because that's something we can pick up. And then also saying something we might regret when we're in a low, So it never hurts to just take a step back, take a few breaths.
What about when things feel scary?
Yeah, that's like obviously.
How do you feel about that?
I think we need to do more of that, unfortunately. And like we know when it's good, when it's bad, scary. Like we can trust ourselves probably to not put ourselves in danger, right? And I think we sometimes use that as like a scapegoat of like, no, but it's actually dangerous. And it's generally those things. I went to an event last night for this organization that's female led, and there were all these pieces that felt aligned, but I wasn't really sure what it was. I knew that at the end of it, I was going to be in a calendar where I'm quite exposed, but tastefully so. And it's to raise money. The last version was to raise money for breast cancer, and this version is going to be to raise money for domestic violence. But I went to this not really knowing what was going on, knowing that everyone else there was Francophone, which is out of, and I can speak French and everything, but it wasn't my community and, so that type of thing. And I wasn't sure. And then I was uncomfortable. And then I got there and I was still uncomfortable. And then I started chatting with people and making connections with people over this 2-hour period, and realizing what the actual mission was. And then realizing, oh yes, okay, this is right. I'm supposed to be here. It's still uncomfortable, but I'm glad I'm here.
And if somebody listening to this right now is very curious about human design and would like to learn more, can they reach out to you, or do you have other resources you would point them to?
I would say they could reach out to me. I think if you Google, human design chart or graph, then you would be able to pull up your chart. But that's when it's going to get a little overwhelming and look like a bunch of gibberish. And there's different websites and stuff. But I would say reach out to me. I actually have a human design 101 type workshop that I led a few weeks ago, but it's still available. So that could be something that would be a good starting point for people. And I'm planning, it's not set in stone yet, but I'm planning on doing a monthly sort of human design happy hour where people could come. Maybe they have a rough idea of what their energy type is, but they could come with their questions and we could talk about real life examples of people living through life and how their human design can be helpful or how they could live more in alignment. And these sort of group conversations, even though we might be talking about a projector energy type and you're a manifesting generator, it's still, we can learn so much. And even like realizing that the human design is called the science of differentiation. So it just reminds us that, we are all unique snowflakes. We know this, but it's a great reminder because when we're doing a project with someone and we think, why can't they keep up? Why aren't they doing it like I'm doing? Or your partner or whatever it is. It's like, oh, right. They're literally, you don't need to know their human design to know they're designed differently, right? And there's more to it than, our gender, our brains, all these other factors too. But human design does help remind us of that.
Yeah. Well, we can put links to those things in the show notes if anyone's interested in reaching out to you.
Great.
Good. So let's talk about your book now. So it has the same title, That Does Not Belong to Me.
Yes.
And so human design guided you in the process, you said, of creating that book. Explain how that was for you. Was it in terms of your own internal process, or also is it in terms of the way the book is structured?
Both, actually. So I started writing, I thought it was about 3 years ago. Maybe the seedling started about 3 years ago, but I think it was a 2-year process, let's say. I did end up working with an editor who I was meeting with every couple of weeks, which, to be honest, if I didn't have someone there as my accountability partner, I would call it, and hired editor, I would not be where I was. It would not be in our hands. I needed that. And I encourage people to get that if they find that they can't move along. And this is human design related too. There's a center that if we have it open, we don't have necessarily the willpower to get the thing done,
Which center is that?
It's the heart center. Okay. And it makes sense because we're so hard on ourselves, right? Yeah. Like, why can't I just go? Why can't I just go to the gym, do the thing, whatever it is, or get that book done, or it's like, and I'm using human design, but it makes sense. It's not always so simple to just get it done. But I did have that was a big help for me to actually move things along. And I ended up using each chapter basically is around one of the energy centers as kind of the guidepost. So it's really just the overarching theme. So you don't need to know human design to read this book, to understand it. Like, it will be more interesting. And some people that I know now are reading it a second time now that they've looked up their chart. So, it just gives a different perspective, but it's not necessary. I really didn't want it to be like a textbook of like, this is about human design. It's more just using it as the guide, and also so that I'm giving real life examples of how people are either living in alignment or out of alignment. And so I know there's so much of that, human design or not, that's relatable. And I like, just as an example, let's say for the head center in the head center chapter, I talk about my relationship with meditation, let's say. So I'm bringing in things like, like inspiration, like I spoke of earlier, the throat center, about finding our voice again. It's just that sort of thing. So that was actually because I went into writing this book not knowing what the format or plan was going to be. So once I figured out that it was going to be the chapters guided by the energy centers, I was like, okay, this gives me a framework. And then I went from there.
Yeah. Good container.
Yes, exactly.
So really what you're saying is it's somebody who is working with their own energetic truth and flow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So have you experienced moments where you're not working with that, where you feel like you're outside of those things?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely shows up in small ways here and there, but I think it also, when I reflect, it's definitely moments where something has kind of run its course and then I'm in it still a little bit too long, let's say. It's kind of coming back to that when something no longer lights you up, change directions. I feel like there's that gray area moment where we're like, no, it's still my thing. You know, you're convincing, it might be a relationship, it might be a job, it might be a project, anything. I don't know, it still works, you know?
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, you're like, you know, deep down, if you were to listen, you know. So I think when I, you know, reflect, I think there were moments where at the end of doing, you know, I was doing a bunch of human design readings during COVID. And, you know, then by the end I was like, okay, now I'm over it. Like you know, the energy isn't there as much as I think this is such a gift. It's such a beautiful thing to offer people. So the thing with these decisions, like I'm even taking a break. I took a break from coaching at the start of the summer because I just needed to protect my energy. Yeah. They're not logical. That's the thing. That's what I love realizing is that, you know, the logical thing right now would be for me to be running programs, doing human design readings so that this book could bring people into my world and I can make money off of that. That's the logical thing, right? Energetically.
Yep.
I have to listen to my, you know, I'm like, I can't write this book and then be a hypocrite and just do these things because that's what makes sense, right? I have to feel it. And I'm really protecting my energy now. So focusing on teaching yoga, Pilates, and the book and these conversations, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess you're honoring your energetic blueprint.
That's right.
You know?
Exactly that.
And so what would you say to somebody who's listening to this, who's just learning that, who's just saying, well, you know, I'm beginning to tap into these feelings, these senses of what lights me up, what doesn't, you know, what feels like it's draining me, what doesn't. What kind of advice can you give to somebody who's just starting on that path?
I think like to exactly what you're saying is the key place to start. And I forget how you put it before, but it's really that like taking inventory of your life. And this sounds complex, but if you really I always think about looking at your calendar and the pieces that you have on your calendar. It's like, you know, some people it's a full day's job, some people it's parenting, some, you know, and then there's a million other little things that fit in there. On that, whatever's on your calendar is where you're putting your time and energy and money maybe too, or receiving, right? The money part it's another interesting part to look at too. What are you spending money on right now? That's part of these exchanges going on. And so that's where you start to realize, like, you might even do just 3 columns of like, what do I dread? What do I look forward to? And what's like neutral, you know?
Okay.
And just place them. And then again, that's really like, you know, if you use Google Calendar, it's all there. You just have to write it all and then place it in these categories. And it gets you at least thinking of. And then you ideally have more things that you look forward to or neutral. And then if you've got a big long list of things you dread, maybe start with removing one. Like,
yeah, one at a time.
One at a time. And we're always going to have things, you know, as much as we'd like to think like perfect alignment is doing only things we, you know, light us up and that we enjoy. It's like, no, we have to also have those things. And that's what I love too, when I either make a decision that I know is out of alignment or I didn't listen to my gut or have weeks where I do too much, I fit too much in and I didn't set those boundaries. I need those weeks. Because then it reminds me, oh, right, not this.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's interesting, too, because different types of people need different types of motivation as well. Because there are those people who go, go, go. And then there are those people that need a little kick in the caboose from time to time. And with all the love and care possible, it will do them some good. So I think maybe human design sheds light on that.
Absolutely. And there's also a big chunk of the population. There's about 70% of the population is go, 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 is meant to be.
Yeah.
When they're doing things that light them, like ideally things that light them up, not just go, go, go for the sake of it. And then about 30% of the population, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, are not meant to. They don't have that sacral energy. That's our life force, like, you know, go, go, go energy. So they can plug into others. It doesn't mean they can't do anything. It doesn't mean, but they need to be more precious. Their work days are meant to be shorter. They're meant to go to bed early, go to bed before you're tired, you know, so there is a totally different way they're meant to be moving through life. And it's pretty much against what society is telling us to do. So it's a bit harder for them to deconstruct and to shed, you know, those expectations that have been built. Yeah. So for all of us, really, we all have that. But I think that those energy types, especially because they're really not meant to live by the same beat that say you or I are.
Yeah, no, and that's really valuable information too, because when we talk about burnout, you know, not everybody fits into the same box. Not everyone is going to have the same method of getting from A to B in a situation. So when we're in a system or we're in a society where it's like that and there's not a lot of flexibility, somebody who falls outside of those parameters might struggle a lot and not understand why.
And think that they're wrong when in fact they're not.
No, that's really interesting. I think you and I are going to have a continued conversation after this podcast.
Can't wait.
I'm going to your workshop. Okay, so we were discussing your book, and I'm also interested in knowing where can somebody find this book?
Well, it is at Brome Lake Books here in Knowlton, which they do have a website too. So I think if you don't live exactly in the area, it can be shipped. So that's my first suggestion. However, it did get published on Amazon because that was the easiest route for me to take. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but as a first-time author, it was the one that just made the most sense for me. So it can be found on Amazon as well.
Okay.
Also in Kindle.
Kindle.
Yeah.
Good. Audible one day?
Yeah. I would love to do an audiobook. Yeah.
Yeah. I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
Well, I do a podcast. I listen to podcasts,
That's
and
right,
I consume a lot of audio because, well, as a manifesting generator, that means I can buzz around the house
That's
and, clean my toilet and enlighten myself at the same time.
Exactly the same.
All right. So this puts you very much in the public eye, right? So the podcast, the book, in general, all of the things that you've done, your entrepreneurship as well, your coaching. So what is visibility like that revealed to you about your growth edges? What's the golden nugget?
Yeah, I think, I used to coach female entrepreneurs, and I used to have a lot of conversations about that, and people would ask about growth, because ideally when you're selling a product or service, you've got your business, you need eyes on it, you need people to purchase it, to make it a business. Like that's just how it has to be. And it's such a long game. Like and I'm not one to like dissect the algorithm and figure out what time you're supposed to be posting at and that sort of thing. But that's something I realized is that it's not meant to be rushed. And I think reaching the point where I'm at now with the book, it's fun to reflect and think about, and not like, oh, I'm so glad I connected with all these people so that they could buy my book and give me money. Like it's really though, there's connections I've been having through Facebook, through conversation with people and now they're reading my book and they're like, thank you so much for this, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like
You've been nourishing your relationships.
I was exactly that. And there were moments where I'd thought like I'd put out a program or something and be like, these people love what I do. Why aren't they signing up? And it wasn't right timing. That wasn't meant for them. But this like $20 tangible book that they can consume in their own time, that's the thing. That's the thing that was meant to get into their hands, Yeah. So yeah, I really feel like to just take your time with nourishing these relationships, and you said it so perfectly, it's so valuable in so many ways, more than just the exchange of money for product or service too.
And getting your message out there.
That's right.
Like your journey is uniquely yours, but it probably reaches out to so many women on so many different levels that, that's also nurturing, and that's also creating a relationship. I mean, even with people who don't know you, who you may never meet in your life, but it's building community. It's reaching outward through your visibility and through your projects to open up these discussions and to help people to heal.
And one of my favorite things is, we at the yoga studio, we have a variety of ages that come to the studio in one single class. And I love that there's been women that are in their 70s, even 80s, coming to me and saying, like the other day, a woman said, I had to reread chapter 9 twice because it really landed. And she, mid 70s or something. And I love it. We're not done. We're never done.
No.
Carry on forever. And it gets better and better. And especially because I do think that generation didn't do what you and I are doing.
No.
And so the fact that they're doing it now is like, thank goodness, because it's not too late.
That's our mother's generation.
Yes.
Yeah. And they grew up differently, and the society was different. And
choices like we do.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it depends where you are in the world. This is all very, cultural to us. But generally speaking, I think that there is more and more of a trend in people wanting to know themselves better, self-discovery, self-care, pausing, shifting, not just going through the motions, that there's more meaning, that they're cultivating not necessarily anything religious, but spiritual in the sense that what feeds me beyond my physical body, beyond making money, where do I get lit up, and where can I share that? Where is it that when I'm in a better space, I can then share it with other people? So I know that, everybody who is on that path will recognize and, will say, yeah, that makes sense. And maybe for some people listening, they're just on the edges of that path or not even. Maybe, in some people's realities, the world is a horrible, terrible place. Tune into the news. Pick your story, and I think that that's also something that we can look at in terms of visibility and sharing, is that there'll be more stories like that. Let's make that kind of news. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I've been going down some rabbit holes and I want to stay informed as much as possible, even though I'm someone who gets easily overwhelmed and tries to put my head in the sand sometimes. But at the same time, I had a friend who put this so well where she said, imagine this giant, I'm talking about the news, just to your point, but a giant table full of food. And you just go and you eat a little bit of it and then you step away and you let that digest. Yeah. And then you go back. And again, it sounds so silly and simple, but I'm like, right. Don't, like the rabbit holes, you should go maybe just a little bit down.
Don't go for serving number 3 at the buffet.
At the same time, in a row. Then just give yourself space, do the things that bring you joy and light and create that in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is some very good advice. All right, I'm going to ask you one hard question.
Okay.
Yeah. What's something people assume is easy for you that actually isn't?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say confidence because I think people see me show up and think that it's easy, on social media videos or whatever it is. But I get nervous every time I step in front of the yoga class. I still get this feeling in my stomach. Social media is easier because I just have my phone. It's just me and my phone. But when I lead a workshop, when I'm talking in front of people, you and me right now, I feel comfortable. But any form of group, it's like I go back to high school me when I used to be like sweating profusely, even though I sounded clear and fine, So I think that's the thing that people might not misunderstand, but just might assume that is easy for me. And I have to say it's gotten easier. So I'm not saying this is like every time it's a real challenge, but there's still a feeling of nerves every time I step in front of a group or go to share something, vulnerable or not. With practice, it's really neat to see that you can improve. And I also think those nerves are healthy too, right?
So where is that coming from? Which center is that?
Yeah, that's probably like, I don't know. I always feel it in my chest a little bit. It's more, I don't know. I wouldn't say the gut so much, but more, the
solar plexus.
Center.
Is that one of the centers?
Well, it is, yes. That's where the emotions are. So it might be that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense because that's your leadership center, right? Like from a yogic standpoint, the solar plexus is the I am. It's how you assert yourself in the world.
That could be it.
Yeah. And it's also another nervous system, right? Like you have your gut nervous system. I think it's the enteric nervous system is what it's called. And more, there is information coming out about how that informs us as well. So that could be something else that maybe there's a crossover in human design. I'm not sure, but I'd certainly be interested in looking into that. Yeah. So I think we are to the point in the podcast where I ask the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, Jamie, do you believe in magic?
I do. I really do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What's magic for you?
Well, I remember when I took my dad one time in particular to his treatment for chemo, and I sat at a cafe to do work while he was in his treatment. And I was sitting at the cafe looking at the hospital. And I really just remember feeling like I was sending him magic in that moment, or that he was there. And I know it's chemo, but there was something about that. I think just that I felt like energetically I was sharing something or feeling that he was receiving something that was going to help him and make him feel better. And it did, And so that's a small example, but I just think there's so much magic in the world. And I think we get to experience it in the form of tingles and shivers and meeting someone that we otherwise wouldn't have met because we took a path that we weren't supposed to take. And all of these little moments that if you open your eyes to them, they are there. And we can choose to see what we want to see.
But there's a bigger design.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. There's also, just to add, that I read about this in my book, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice, but the word abracadabra means speaking your magic. And it's literally, I forget exactly how it translates, but it's really about the fact that what you speak can come true.
Oh yeah. Words have power.
Yeah. So, and I love that that's what abracadabra means, you know? So that's a beautiful reminder that every word we speak has the power to create a shift or a gift.
Well, that's it. So we're going to cast some good spells in our universe.
That's right.
And see what comes back. So what does containing your magic mean for you then?
I think it's just continuing on this path of really being curious of what feels good, what doesn't feel good, just coming back to that and really trying to I like thinking of decluttering as well. And I've been doing that. And so I already feel in this more current season of since the book came out, end of 2025, I got the clear scan, end of 2025, and it's just felt like more spacious for various reasons. But trying to keep it that way. And yes, it does get filled with various things, but I think that to me is just keeping out the clutter, working on that mentally as well too, because we have a lot going on behind the scenes here in this sometimes constant reel of noise that sometimes doesn't serve anything, but there it is, So just being aware of that as well. And not rushing into this next thing, because there's a lot going on inside of me in this container that I know I could do. And I'm just being patient with myself at the moment and enjoying this somewhat decluttered space and slower pace. I think it was a long time needed. And so I think there's going to be more to come that I'm sure, the momentum will pick up and I'll, have some fun ideas or new creations to put out there to the world. But at this moment, it's more just containing this space for myself that is a real gift.
I think you're right. You've said a couple times just to sit with it, sit with the feeling, sit with the sense of it, make room for something new, for fresh energy, for things to move, even though you don't need to move them right now. The space is there. Yeah, that's some good magic. So what's interesting about containing her magic or your magic or my magic is that we're going to be doing it together. Yay. I am going to be giving a workshop at your studio in April. So I'm very excited about that. So it'll be the Contain Her Magic experience. And it's a mind-body coaching workshop. And if you want more information about that, you can find it in the show notes.
Yes.
Jaime, there is one question that I think our listeners would be really interested in knowing, and that is, what are some of the non-negotiable things that you do include in your day? Like some tangible practices, tools, mindset tips that bring you back to yourself and that you are your go-to tools after everything that you've lived and experienced?
A cup of coffee in the morning.
Amen.
We're drinking tea right now, which is lovely, but I do love my morning cup of, I'll just plug Virgin Hill coffee because it's my favorite, but that's literally at this moment in my life, the one consistent thing, along with at night, this is the longest I've done something like this, but I have a 5-year journal next to my bed, which is one of these little tiny stubby fat journals. And at the top, it has the date, and then it has 5 little paragraphs where you fill in the year. So if you do it consistently enough, if you don't lose it throughout this time, you'll see over the last, eventually, 5 years, what you wrote on that day. And so this is the first time I finally made it through a year, and I'd previously written in it in 2020. And so it's just little snippets. It might be like we used to write in our journals of Dear Diary, today I, took my dog for a walk. But it's just I write usually little moments of something that stood out in that day. And now I'm getting to see either from 5-6 years ago, certain things I wrote, or the ones that I wrote a year ago. And even that, it's just so beautiful and magical actually to see either how far I've come or what I've been through or the growth, So, I've just named those 2 things that kind of bookend my day. The other thing that I would say that helps me is when I stop, and I keep talking about kind of this pause, but if I'm feeling flustered, if I'm I can tell in those moments, my partner, sometimes he's home and off and on because he works away. As you can tell, he's about to leave soon. But, there's moments where we're navigating the household together, which I'm sure anyone
navigating with your captain, is that it? Is that the title? Did I get it right? Yeah.
But I'm sure anyone with a partner or someone that lives with, if many people have many people in their households that they can relate, but you feel this like frustration over the silly household things, But like in those moments, of course there's moments where I just stew in the frustration and whatever, clunk around, but as much as possible, catching myself and literally like putting myself in a timeout almost, like not in a punishment way, but in a way of like, just step away, like literally go sit in the bathroom for a moment or go lay down for a second, listen to a song, whatever, like go read a chapter, go just step away. So I think it's more those, it's like those spontaneous moments where you catch yourself, and I don't want to say correct yourself, but like you ask, like I used to do this all the time. Another simple thing is like hand to heart, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
And I think so many women or people don't know what they actually need because we haven't asked ourselves. So just starting the practice of asking,
what do I need?
What do I need? Now? And you might not have an answer yet. You might not know, but and then you experiment with like, is this, or do I pull a card and just, light a candle and just look at that for 10 seconds? Literally anything. It doesn't need to be complicated. And then ideally giving yourself that.
Yeah. That's it. So that's again, coming back to self and getting into that habit of making that a thing. Right?
Exactly.
Like, it has to be, you have to shed light on it to have awareness.
Yes.
It's like the shadow side, right? It can have a tremendous amount of control over you when you're unaware of it. Mm-hmm. And then there's two things that happen, at least in my experience, from when you start to shine light onto that shadow. Mm-hmm. One is yay, and the other is, oh no. And it's that when you can do something about it. And then the other is when you can do something about it.
Exactly.
And then there's that responsibility of that awareness that says, oh, okay, so now that I actually know what's going on, or maybe I've clued into what I need, how do I begin to give myself that?
100%. And it's so funny. I got interviewed for the local radio station CIDI by this lovely woman. She'd been in one of my programs in the past, and she had my book, and she was like, she knew she was going to interview me, so she wanted to read it before doing that. But she said, I kept putting it off. And she's like, I knew, like she didn't know what exactly was going to be in the book, but she said, I knew I was going to see something that I would need to, that would dig up a bit, it would, and that she would then not be able to unsee it and maybe have to do something and make a slight change or pivot, but we can't force those moments either. Mm-hmm. We have to wait till we're ready. So
yeah, that's it. Transformation happens when you're ready.
Yes.
Yeah, it really does. And if you're on a path of transformation and, you come up against, like we've discussed in your life story and most recently, your journey with your illness and so on, that when things come up, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the wrong path. It just means that you need to look at it differently, and that sometimes you do take that pause because your pacing might be different. Mm-hmm. So it's not that, we have a failure. It's rather a redirection.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly that.
And I'd like to just wrap up with one thought. And I'd just like you to say first thing that comes to mind. If I said to you the words sovereignty through surrender, what would that mean for you?
When I was leading my last program I led, which was called The Homecoming, the last chapter of it was freedom. And I feel like that is the hope, is that the more we can, I think surrender is a beautiful word of, obviously letting go of what doesn't belong to us, of surrendering to, there's a certain acceptance that's needed based on our circumstances. And that doesn't mean you're powerless, right? It's that play of like, okay, this is my reality. Now, what am I going to do about it? And feeling like you are in charge in more ways than you might think, right? That I think we often think, well, this is how it is. Oh, this always happens to me. These are my, I'm always dealt this hand. And that's something, speaking back to abracadabra, and we speak what we create, or, be careful with that language. But realizing that, what if you just pivot that, start with the words you use, and then actually realize that you have the ability to change your life. You do. And you have to want it. You have to see it. You have to be aware and pause to be able to see what you like, what you don't like, that inventory thing. But But you do have the ability, but playing with that balance of masculine and feminine, of surrendering to, the reality, and then also taking action on what it is that you do actually want.
That's it. So you don't always have control over circumstances outside of you, but you have the inner authority to choose how you're going to respond to it.
Yes, you put that perfectly in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me today and to have this great conversation. Very wise words from a woman who's lived a really amazing and inspiring life and who continues to reach out in her community and to make connections that just continue to grow and to nourish. So thank you so much
for having me. And thank you for creating this podcast. More of these conversations are needed in the world. So thank you, Sonia.
Before you move on with your day, I'd like to invite you to take a moment for yourself. Maybe later today or right now, if you have some time, make yourself a cup of coffee or maybe a cup of tea. Step away from the noise and give yourself 5 minutes of quiet to simply pause and reconnect. If you'd like a little support for that moment, you can download my 5 minutes just for you practice. It's a short, simple way to pause, breathe, and begin reclaiming your light and feel lifted. You'll find the link in the show notes. And in the coming days, I invite you to stay curious about your own inner wisdom. Notice what feels aligned and what may not belong to you. If something becomes clear for you, I'd love to hear about it. Tell us in the comments, what are you noticing that no longer belongs? And if this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing the episode with someone who might need to hear it too. Because, as we've explored today, there is real healing in connection and community. Let's keep the conversation alive. Well, my lovelies, I hope you feel uplifted and inspired. Remember, your fire is sacred. Hold it, nurture it, and let it light your path without burning out. And I hope that you'll join me for the next episode of Contain Her Magic, a sacred space to honor your path, discover your unique gifts, and to unapologetically embody your truth and your joy. I'm Sonia Bayo. Until next time, burn bright and hold on to your magic.